I'm Sir Flowbojan Thunderhammer.
And I'm Teflon Frosthammer.
And I'm Cabbage Tidehammer.
And this
is
WAK.
If Amtgard knighthood means anything, you can't knife a motherfucker and keep it.
And the thing that people need to understand essentially about arts and sciences events is that your scores don't matter.
Do you want a black phoenix or a white phoenix?
Jeez, language, man. We're on a freaking podcast, for fuck's sake.
Mind-blowing experience, right?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to WAK, where we discuss topics important to the Amtgard community at large and talk with interesting people from around the foam-fighting world. Today, we have Jojo Potato of Northreach and Leon of Rivia from Winter's Edge. How you doing, everybody?
Glad to be here.
Very happy to be here.
Awesome. So we're doing this sort of as a Black History Month podcast, but also this is two different perspectives from across the United States. We can obviously get the perspective from Winter's Edge and then a perspective all the way from Alaska. Is that right?
Yes. Sorry, I muted myself. Yes, it is. Yes.
No, perfect. That's great mic discipline. It's awesome. It's good to see it. So we'll start with Jojo then. Jojo, how did you get into Amtgard?
How did I get into Amtgard? Oh, it was the funniest thing. I hope my echo isn't too bad in here.
Not at all. We can't hear it on this end.
Okay, sweet. Like it's the only quiet room in my house right now. But I'm originally from California. I moved up here when I was 18 with my husband, and I've lived here ever since. And so the only thing that I ever grew up knowing, since I grew up in California, I've only played D&D. So the whole actual LARP community, actual people doing foam, swinging foam and everything, I didn't really pick up or pay attention to. I don't know now. I have no idea how I missed it. Going to Comic-Con and hanging out, with D&D, people who love D&D, and especially, being a part of theater and everything. I don't know how that one went over my head, but I didn't discover it until I was 26 and I was well into living up here. And it was right after I had my son and I was kind of overweight. And I'm like, I got to do something to get this belly off of me because it's ridiculous, And then I was just thinking to myself, I need to do something. And then I look and there's a bunch of these people in costumes. I'm like, I kind of recognize one of them, one's a wizard. Yeah, I know that one. And,
right.
Oh, wow. What is this? What are they doing? I want to do that. Not only that, it didn't look too hard. So I'm like, okay, I can do that. And so I walked up and the first person I met was Aurora. Her name is Jen. She was very welcoming. She was very well known, a part of the kingdom at the time. She had had done in Monarch region, had done through gone through that whole little phase. So she was able to fill me in on a lot of it. And I literally just dove headfirst into it because I thought it was amazing. I love that it was family friendly, that I could bring my son, I love that it was all a place where you didn't have to swing foam if you didn't want to, because I know some people aren't into that kind of thing. It was the first time I've ever in my life used a sewing machine besides being out of high school. I totally was oh my God, do they still exist? And so it opened up a whole new world. I met a lot of people, especially living in a small town, especially Kenai, Alaska, very small town. There's not much to do at all. So definitely when you get a small little group of people you really click with, you really try to stick with them, and it was really nice. So that was kind of how I dove into it. I just kind of thought it was I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's surprising that there is such a big Amtgard community up there in Alaska. It's actually really awesome to see. I know, God, you guys might be the most remote Amtgard that exists now. I know for a while there was a kingdom maybe they were a principality in Croatia of all places. I don't think they exist anymore. I think they sort of got subsumed by some games that exist in Europe that are very similar. But so, for something to exist all the way up in Alaska, obscure like Amtgard, is really cool.
Yeah.
Leon, tell us about how you got into Amtgard.
Oh yeah, of course. Honestly, my story's a little bit like Joe's. Basically, it was that I was a college student at Kansas State University at the time. Basically, say 2 or 3 years ago, and a good buddy I knew for about a year at that time was on Hail the Hobbits.
Yep.
Yeah. Basically, he was like basically became the new monarch of Iron Springs, and he was just out on the field. I was like, oh hey, hey Bonnie, and I basically met up with him and chatted, and like I didn't try any LARPing at the time. Basically, the only thing I ever done was D&D. And I was like, okay, this is actually pretty cool. And basically, when I first tried it out, I was like, okay, then when I got the time for it, I'll definitely come back and try it out because yeah, this is actually pretty cool. So then that following summer, basically, I was like, oh yeah, Hale's still doing Iron Springs. Like I called him and say like, hey, when are you meeting? It was like, oh yeah, we meet basically every Wednesday. I was like, okay, bet. And then I came to practice basically every week after that. And soon after that, I became an officer. Currently now the champion. I'm happy to say that. And now, upcoming during coronation, I will plan to be the next monarch of Iron Springs, which I'm pretty great happy about too. So yeah, honestly, like Amtgard or basically LARPing in general is a very great hobby of mine now. Like I'm, yeah, I'm now head deep into it myself. Basically, I got a huge pile of like armor and weaponries and all that stuff like that in my garage now. I was like, oh man, yeah. Once you get to that point, there's like no going back, and I'm happy about it.
Yeah, you're stuck once you make the investment of armor for sure.
Oh yes,
it's amazing to me how much D&D gets people into Amtgard. So many people say they started with D&D or Magic the Gathering. And then they come to Amtgard as a result. They either met somebody playing it or something like that. I actually ended up going the other way. I did Amtgard first and then discovered D&D afterwards. So from there, Jojo, I'm going to toss this back to you. One of the things that kind of struck me when you were telling us how you got in, you said that it looked easy. And that is true. It looks easy to a lot of people. You jump into the game, it's sort of simple, but then at some point somebody hands you 100+ page rule book. And usually you play people will start you out as barbarian and say, here's your gear, here's what you do. And then you get into it and you pick up that rule book and you're like, oh God. So jumping in at that point, when was the first time you realized like, hey, Amtgard's complex or Amtgard has a lot of depth to it?
It happened exactly how you said it. I thought it would be easy, and it was not. And I was like, oh wow, I need something a little bit easier to begin with. And someone gave me a bar book, and they was like, start with barbarian. And I was like, yes, thank you for this.
That's exactly what happened with me too.
I did that to you. I said, look, day one, just take this shield and this sword and this sash and just go hit people.
Yeah. But it was, so what I mean by it looked easy, it wasn't like, I had to sign a waiver. It wasn't some hard, like, little tryout scheme or anything I had to do. Everybody was really welcoming. They're like, it's a family-friendly environment. The only rule is, keep it family-friendly. Other than that, just be, a good person. We'll see, that's hard, And so, yeah, right. And so it was actually really nice. Yeah, it was really, really complicated. Definitely learn the different classes and the rules, and to not only acknowledge and remember that, and then actually apply it to like a battle game or like tournaments and stuff like that. So that was definitely hard, but it was also really fun because they would always match you up with someone that was really the pro in that class. And so just seeing the pure passion and just someone so happy and like ready to show me something, I was like, oh my God, okay, I want to learn it. I was like, because you want to show me this, I want to learn this.
That's something we should adopt here, because currently we don't really, I guess this might be a local park thing, but we don't match somebody with somebody who's a pro in that class. We just throw them in the deep end and we're like, all right, you're a bard now. I'm going to stab you. Yeah, and the hardest part for me though was always learning distances. I think we've talked about this on the show before, but 20 feet is not nearly as far as it looks.
Yeah, no, it's definitely not.
Yeah, I found out that my car is just over 20 feet the other day, and I was like, it doesn't look that long. It messed with me. All right, Leon, we're going to kick back to you. What's the first time Amtgard got hard or challenging or something like that? Like, when did that realization dawn on you that this game has a lot of depth and it can be a little difficult?
Oh boy, I would definitely say all the magic classes for sure. Oh boy. just like looking at those spells and stuff like that. Oh man, there's a lot of stuff you gotta memorize when thinking about like say what kind of like spell set you want, say when playing wizard, druid, healer, all that sort of things. It's
Mhm.
like insane. And I think that um the complexity of it, I think is really like an interest because I think a lot of people who are getting into Amtgard, they ask to themselves like, hey, is it like that you can go pro with this or is it just for fun? And I think a lot of people like really get more motivated, interested in when we say like, oh yeah, there's like big events like that, we got tournaments and all that stuff, like, oh, okay, bet.
Mhm.
And I think that really is a good like motivation when you like learn about like, hey, we can actually really go serious into this if you really want to. And yeah, that's what really hooked me into that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you go pro enough, eventually we've got a special belt for you that has a certain stripe on it and all that. We actually
Yeah.
have someone in the waiting room, so I'm going to go ahead and let them in. And we'll let them get connected to audio. Give it just a moment here. Hello, can you hear us okay?
Sure can.
All right. So we are actually recording at the moment. Gwendolyn, can you give me your persona name and tell us where you're from?
Dame Astrianna, and I'm from Fairbanks, Alaska.
So that's also Northreach, right?
Yes, it also is.
All right, fantastic. It looks like, are you driving? I don't want to hit you with a ton of questions if you're driving just yet.
Yeah, I'm just getting to my house.
No worries, that's fine. We're going to continue on. When you get home, we'll start throwing questions your way. Until then, we'll keep it safe, okay? All right, fantastic. So, okay, yeah, so that's the first time Amtgard, has a lot of depth. You look into, I think, seeing that first big event is really when you realize, like, oh crap, there's a lot of depth to this game. There's a lot of nuance to it.
So speaking of first events, Leon, weren't both of our first events where we met each other? Was it Kazan's Knighting? Was that your first event? Because that was my first event.
I think it was, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, was it up in oh gosh, I'm bad with geography, like in Kentucky or something like that, or in
Same, I'm awful with
It's
geography.
Fall Creek Falls, which I think is like it's a state somewhere.
Fall Creek Falls is that's middle South Tennessee, right? I'm
Oh
the
yeah,
worst
Tennessee,
person to make
yeah.
this guess. I think I'm the
Tennessee.
absolute worst person for it.
I think so. Yeah. Let's just go with that. Sure.
Right. So one of the things I wanted to ask is, and this is largely because, a lot of Amtgarders are just white dudes. And, we have a very, especially you play Amtgard in the South, we have a very white Southern perspective. How is it different for you stepping into the game, as a black man? What has your experience been like? And is it bad? Is it good? How can we make it better? What have you noticed?
Honestly, for me, the community has been all more than welcoming, in my opinion. Yeah, like definitely, of course, like it just depends on like I guess like where you are from and where you live and all that stuff. But for me personally, like it's best like the Amtgard community, all more than friendly, all that stuff. Of course, everybody just want to have a good time, have fun, all that things, and I know we definitely do have like things in place in which like, hey, don't be a jerk and all that stuff, which I'm definitely happy about too. But yeah, like honestly, and for me, it's like yeah, of course, yeah, we're in the South. Maybe well, we don't really have like that much of like diverse ethnicity for sure. Like in I guess in our region, but I know for a fact that like if like basically anybody comes in to play Amtgard, like they're more than welcome, which I'm very happy about.
Yeah, absolutely. It was so. What prompted this? Not really this question, but just this idea for a podcast was we did one with Sir Delos. He is a sword knight in Texas. I can't remember if that's CK or Wetlands, but he's Native American, and he talked about how there's very little representation of other cultures, other races, anything like that in Amtgard. And it sort of behooved me. I was like, we have a platform where we talk about these things. So, Jojo, I'm going to kick it up to you. The question was, obviously Amtgard is made up of a ton of white people. And, for us, we don't notice a lot of things sometimes unless it happens directly to us. What has your experience been like, either, stepping into Amtgard? Is that experience something that can be improved on? And if so, how?
Well, Hmm.
And I
It's
understand
definitely
that's a really loaded question. So if there's parts of that you don't want to answer, don't feel like you have to.
yeah, I was like, just kind of throw it at me right there now. No, I got it. I can roll with it. I would say it definitely, it definitely, it depends on the area you are. That is a big factor into like, the diversity of like how many people, you will and won't have around you, that's used to it or whatnot. Um, I can only use like me and myself personally, my situation, an
Right.
example, being here is not a lot of that at all, it's not a lot of it at all. It's not really around. It's not really seen much or anything. I'll be back in just a second. No. I'm doing a video. Okay, I'll give it to you.
Hi.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I have a 7-year-old. It's perfectly fine.
Okay, yeah. It's my 5-year-old son. Yeah, so it's very different, up here. Not a lot of people that I could really just right off the bat just have a conversation with and they really understand me. Getting into Amtgard, obviously Northridge, it wasn't like something that I really, let's say, I guess I was really just in awe of like how like fascinating and fun it was, and how much I was learning at the time to like really pay attention or see like, if it was going on like, the entire time besides like me like seeing little things and besides like, people coming up to me saying little things. And it wasn't until like, you get involved in a community and you actually start seeing like, people and going to events in different places that I begin to kind of like, get in those situations where I'm just kind of like, oh, hey, no one else thought that was kind of uncalled for or got that, just me? Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, of course, just me, because, little black me, but it's just like it's certain things like that, and I would say it wasn't really difficult when it happened because anytime a situation would happen, I would kind of address it or kind of call it out. But I would always do my best, to always be respectful and mindful, that people might not understand of like what they say and do, So I'm just kind of like, hey, you really shouldn't say that. That's kind of like, kind of, racist. If you say that, and they're like, oh, okay, I didn't know that, yeah. So I kind of called it out like that, or like, hey, do you know what you just said, or kind of stuff like that. And I found that that was the best way to kind of handle that. Most people were kind of like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that or whatnot. And then I would kind of get the ones that was like, oh, that's not racist. Well, I don't think that's racist, and kind of thin line, definitely thin lines. But it was definitely hard to be the only one because you don't want to be that person that always feels like you're nagging or only person that like calls out these things or says these things, because like I don't want to be like, Tattletale Joe. Like she's just the one going around like, snitching. And it almost how it makes you feel because like I'm not a serious person. I know we all make jokes and we all have like, that humor side and we all have different connections with people, and certain friends have been friends longer than other friends that hang out in the same group.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally get that, and I know how to roll with punches, but like it's definitely a line between jokes that are really kind of like you could laugh about and be like, hey dude, just don't do that anymore. And then jokes that you're just like, all right, why does that even come out of your mouth and who taught you that?
Right.
Kind of thing. Yeah. And so I found myself just kind of mainly just talking to the people at the time that I always had the problem with. I found that maybe if I just addressed it with that person only, then it would be fine. But it worked out best that way, because a lot of people respect me and everything. But it didn't kind of work out because it was just kind of like, well, I have this incident with this person, but since they didn't share their experience, what happened or what they said with anybody else, then somebody else would make the same mistake, and then it's kind of like a going down the line, but like, didn't you just talk? Isn't he your friend? Couldn't he have told you that? No, I just think it's like, okay, yeah.
It can be kind of scary to have to advocate for yourself like that all the time. This is a weird story, but my son, the first time I realized that like sometimes there are things that you don't even realize aren't okay because they've just been a part of your life forever. Maybe not the first time, but my son actually came home from preschool one day. He was like 3.5, 4 years old. And I said, hey, let's sit down and work on this puzzle. I said, oh, don't worry about the couch. Just sit down. And I said, well, sit down Indian style. And he said, no, Dad, it's crisscross applesauce. And I was like, why do they call it crisscross applesauce? Like, that doesn't make sense. Yeah, it turns out calling it Indian style is actually not okay. Like, that is that is sort of stereotyping a culture. And I went, oh fuck. So I started thinking, like, examining everything, like all of the turns of phrase. I was like, is that bad? Are we stealing? Is that some kind of negative connotation? And it's there, like you said, genuinely, sometimes I think people don't realize, but having to be the person that always calls them out can't be fun either.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It definitely takes to be those type of people that are willing to have communications and sit down and talk to people, to just like, because I know it's a hard conversation. Like I like to think I'm perfect and never make mistakes ever. So so to have someone tell me like, yo, what you said was kind of like, borderline racist, I'd be like, what, really? Oh, okay, wow, I'm sorry. Like, I really thank you for telling me, and I'll try to never do that again. And those are hard conversations, but I'm willing to have conversations like that. Like, if it's all love and just willing to communicate, because I'm not one to just really just beat someone, just like, hey, what you said was racist, not F you. Like, I don't want it to get to that level. It will definitely get there after I've like warned you a couple of times. But I'm all for just like talking and actually having conversations with people who actually really want to change, and not just like kind of like, oh, okay, like, just agree with me, kind of mock me thing, kind of be like, thank you, Joe. Like, I actually appreciate what you just told me, and I will apply that to my daily life from now on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think most people don't want it to get to that screaming fighting match thing, and the people that do are just trolling online, or they're just they get their rocks off by being the devil's advocate kind of person.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So let's move on to maybe a little bit lighter of a topic. So I want to know, and correct me if I'm wrong when it's safe to do so. Dame Astrianna, you are Monarch of Northreach currently, right?
No, I've been Monarch of Northreach.
Okay. I recognized your picture there.
I'm currently the ambassador for Northreach. So I'm their rep person for MOC or COM. Yeah, that's what's called, COM. So I'm often in a lot of those meetings for that.
Okay. That sounds similar to the senator program, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's why I see your picture always pop up.
Right. It's just Northreach likes to do things differently because we're weird.
Honestly, the senator or whatever system sounds so much better than the Monarch doing it all, which is what we're stuck with here in Winter's Edge. So,
Oh
God. I thought Vidalia was going to add something to that. She just said, have fun with that.
Oh, I patted him on the back reassuringly. That's your job, bud.
Yeah, I'm stuck with it for a few more months. So I want to change the topic just a little bit. Obviously, and Dame Astrianna, if it's safe to do so, we want to hear how you got into Amtgard. I just don't want to, pressure you to do anything while you're driving.
I'm parked in my driveway right now, so I'm all right. And it's quieter in here than it is in my house. So, yep, I got a 2-year-old, so it's never going to be quiet in there.
Yep. Nope.
Right. Yeah. So I got into Amtgard. Actually, I refused to get out of the car the first day. Duke Goldcrest, Archduke Goldcrest, and Dame Chalet had started a park in Alaska in Fairbanks when they were stationed here with the Air Force. And so they put up a flyer at our local comic shop. And so we went out, and my friends dragged me out, and I sat in the car, and I refused to get out because I didn't want to play with these nerds and be seen with all these people in my very small town. And I had a rep to protect. So I refused to get out of the car. I just watched them swing phone and have a really good time. And so then the next time I came out, and that was in 2000. And that was 1999 is when I did my first game. And so from that point on, we were hooked, and my whole group of friends, which were already nerds playing Vampire. And then we switched over to Amtgard, and we just have been doing it ever since.
That's fantastic. So that's actually a little different than the traditional, D&D Magic the Gathering. Comic book shop is a little different, but I guess.
Well, Vampire the Masquerade is also one of those tabletop role-playing games. So it's kind of similar.
But we did like Camarilla, which is like in the LARP version of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wore a schoolgirl costume. It was terrible.
Oh no, I could tell stories about some of the bad garb and weapons I used to make, but we won't. So I want to jump back to Leon. Leon, we actually met for the first time at a sort of day event down in Winter's Edge, actually not that long ago. So I noticed you had a bunch of armor. You had you had the big two-hander. Am I right?
Yeah. Basically, had like a sort of like mid-length two-handed longsword, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Got it from, I think it was from Gorg. Yeah, Gorg Tech.
Does it have the 3 little asterisks on it? I think that's their symbol.
Yeah, I believe so. Yep.
Yeah. So why you were playing warrior? Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
So why warrior? Why not bard, which is the best class, or archer, which can be fun if you have money? Like why not some of those?
So funny story about that. Basically, like I think with a lot of people, they usually have like this this like dream character that they like want to be when coming into Amtgard. And I was like, okay, I just want to be that cool buff warrior that everybody wants to be, right? And basically, like I invested in warrior. But funny thing about like being warrior, no. Funny thing about like what I thought was the deal was that with basically like the those like up close and personal classes like warrior, barbarian, monk. I thought those were the only classes that you can actually have like a long sword, right?
Oh,
but
no.
like then Heyo told me like later, like way like say months later, like, oh no, dude, you can actually have like a sword or any weapon with any sword class. I was like, what? But then it was like warrior was like my most invested class so far. I was like, okay, then I'll just be warrior for now. But yeah, funny enough, I'm now putting skill points into barbarian right now because it's not like, okay, barbarian's actually pretty good fit. It's pretty simple, and oh boy, that fight after death, my goodness.
Yeah, and you can get away with more without armor, which as it gets hot, it's going to be kind of a godsend.
You were talking about those fantasy like characters that you kind of want to embody when you come to Amtgard, and mine is Conan. I just want to be the female version of Conan.
There you go. Yeah, honestly, my fantasy character coming in was right after I played Witcher 3 on Geralt of Rivia for sure. That's where the Leon Rivia came from.
I figured.
Yeah.
I my first attempt at any type of character archetype was I wanted to be Cloud, so I had a Buster sword. It never made it to field because it shattered the first time I swung it at someone. Yeah, it wasn't great. And then I did bring a big heavy, like, we're not even going to call it a sword. It was just a big club, and it wasn't fun to fight with at all. So I very quickly was like, oh, maybe it doesn't matter the archetype, and I'll just be short sword guy. Jojo, same question to you. What class do you normally play? I know you said you don't have to fight, and that was the thing that drew you in. So if you don't fight and you don't play a class, what's your favorite thing to do outside of that?
Well, I definitely always fight.
Okay.
I always fight when I play Barbar because I like the whole kind of the whole persona they have, like they're kind of dumb. I feel like I'm dumb when it comes to smart. I feel like I try to get as much information as I can in my little brain, and it just holds as much as it can, and then still isn't enough. I feel like I still don't know much about it, but I love playing Barbarian just because I can go out there and just kind of do my thing, and it's fun. And I don't have any armor, so it's the best class I can have, the best without having so much armor. But when I'm not actually fighting, I actually do like to do the A&S competitions sometimes, because they're pretty fun and they're actually pretty cool. I haven't done one in a long time, but before, I've baked a couple of cakes and cookies, sewed a couple things, and haven't done any woodwork. But yeah, that's really cool, and I actually like that. A lot of people know that I'm a pretty artsy person, but I actually really enjoy all kinds of arts and crafts, which was really nice to know that a group of other people did that besides the whole fighting, because I have a lot of friends that are really timid, and I'm the tomboy in the group, so I'm just like, I'll go out there and kick ass. That's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dame Astrianna, same question for you. What class do you normally play, and why is it not Bard? And if you don't fight, then what's your favorite thing to do outside of that?
Actually, I'm a Paragon Bard.
Yes.
Yeah. But my first class I leveled up in was Wizard, and that was like in 2001, I think, is when I was the first 6th level wizard or 6th level person in Alaska, and so that was like a huge thing. But also, this was like V6, so it took a long time to get there. So it was kind of a big deal. And so when and if I go on the field right now, I'm just playing warrior because I actually broke my leg and I stopped fighting after I broke my leg. And so I haven't played probably actively for, I don't know, 5-6 years, just because I thought, do I like my limbs or do I want to play Amtgard? And I'm getting older now. I'm in my 40s. And so I'm thinking, and the problem also is as soon as I got my white belt, people started gunning for you on the field. Even though my belt isn't in fighting, people see the white belt and they immediately start tagging you really hardcore, and it just wasn't fun, especially at big events, because people don't know what kind of belt it is until they get up close, and by then they're already swinging and you don't have time to dodge. So I stopped fighting, and I just started doing the social part of it and doing a lot of the advocacy part of it instead, and I enjoy that part a lot more. Also, less likely for me to get a knee injury, and I don't have good insurance, so I'm just going to keep my limbs.
Every Amtgarder, I think, at some point has to make that choice between, like, do I want my joints to work tomorrow morning, or do I want to, fight in this battle game? Sir Flo has, we affectionately call them bitch ankles. He literally, I'm not joking, he broke his ankle talking on the phone at field. He was just pacing around the field and then was like, hey, go get your car. I need to go to the hospital. And we're like, what the fuck? He's going to get mad that I told that story, but it's fine.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and he's a fantastic fighter is the goofiest part, but he's also like 6'10", and he's too tall for his own good.
He hits you from another area code.
Yeah.
Like
he fights with 40s, and he's got the longest arms I've ever seen. So you mentioned the advocacy part of Amtgard, and this is a thing that I actually really like seeing online. People are advocating for a lot more ADA compliance. One of the things I'd like to do is actually put the rule book in an audiobook format for people who don't read so well and things like that. What does the advocacy part look like? Because there's a lot of things to advocate for in Amtgard, and I don't think that'll stop anytime soon. But what's that look like for you?
Well, like what everyone's sort of talking about in this podcast, one advocating for more minorities and more underrepresented groups in Amtgard, and being able to be that person that, oh, look, there are people, because in my culture, like, I'm half Asian and I'm half Black, and neither of them think that this is a good plan for my life and I should be doing things that are making me money. And so spending my weekends playing Amtgard is not something that they understand, nor does neither community really appreciate. And so it's very interesting, because like my Korean family would prefer that I was studying on the weekend and doing all the things that are going to help me make money. And my African American side is like, why are you wasting your time doing this? There is nobody else out there like you out there. So why are you spending your time with them? Come and hang out with the family and spend more time with the family instead. And so there's always this push that people of color don't have a place in LARPs and gaming situations, because we just haven't been there. We've been there, but we just can't talk to our families about it. And so without that family support, a lot of us kind of go away from it. Like, I'm fighting right now to get my brother back in, and he's a really great fighter, but his wife is Thai, and she does not understand why he would ever want to go and play a LARP when he could be at home taking care of the kids or doing and making money and working instead. And so we've had this conversation with her, trying to get him to come back out, but she doesn't understand the waste of time, which is how it's seen in a lot of cultures. So I'm advocating for getting more people, BIPOC people, into Amtgard. Also, I love the idea of having an audiobook. I'm also a teacher. And so anything we can do to make it accessible to everybody, the better. We have a lot of people in Astro Winds who can't read. They don't read. And so people have to help them. Or we have lots of autistic folks that are part of Amtgard that just need something to help them through those transitions. And so having a person, and I know Northreach has done this, a lot of other groups have, trying to have somebody who can help educate our populace, because we all know Amtgarders are not the most socially adept people in the world. Right. So we may need to help them a little bit to understand social norms. Mm-hmm. And so that's the other part of the advocacy. And so we're trying to get a school age program started up here. I know somebody in the lower 48 has already done that. Oh, that's, by the way, what we call all y'all folks, lower 48ers.
That's fine.
And so we're trying to get school age programs started up here so we can advocate for Amtgard as a sport in Alaska. And so we're working on that. And that's the kind of advocacy I want to do, because we can't keep going if we don't have youth coming in. And if we alienate the youth, then we have nowhere to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 things really quick. The first is I absolutely want to make that into an audiobook. I have to get some approval from AI because it's their copyright. And if I just put it on Spotify, that can be problematic. The other thing, you actually said something that I had never thought about. Again, white dude. But it is really, it's a lot easier to get into something and for it to be acceptable to your family if there are people that look like you doing it already. That never occurred to me before. Like that's one of those things. I think for me, like I go out and see people that look like me all the time. My friends are like, "Oh, you do that thing over there. That's cool." And I never get questions about it. My family's like, "Oh, you're still doing the Amtgard thing? Cool, have fun." So I've never had that come up before. I don't know that I have a more salient point here other than like that's never occurred to me.
Yeah, honestly, if I can bring up a point like that family thing, that family support thing, actually, like, sort of, I had that sort of experience too. It was just like, it was just that basically when I first did Amtgard, I was like, oh boy, what my parents gonna think like that. It was like I knew that basically like my parents wouldn't mind either way, but I was still like sort of like that embarrassed factor of it somehow when you like actually like really like start Amtgard for the first time, like oh my gosh, I look like a nerd. Is everybody just gonna shun me or everything like that? But like basically like my parents were like, oh yeah, yeah, that's cool. That's actually pretty sweet. I was like, oh yeah, yeah. So honestly, yeah, it's sort of like yeah, it actually does help to see like I guess like people just like you out there on the field. So you feel like, yeah, yeah, this is actually a pretty normal thing to do and all that stuff. And honestly, thankfully, we have our park on actual college campus. And Kansas State University, that's where we do it at, is honestly like a pretty diverse like place. So honestly, we get like a lot of students like from every sort of background and ethnicity walking by and say like, "Hey, what's this?" And like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." And they actually like come in, drop in, and play and all that stuff, and it's pretty great because like honestly, at first when Iron Spring first started up, it was just pretty like very small. It was basically only like basically Heyo and another gal who comes by Calcifer doing Iron Spring from every day, but then like grew and grew and grew, and now we're super big, and now everybody comes in and tries out, so that's great. And I feel like the more young people we get, the more possibilities that basically Amtgard as a whole may basically like has a chance to diversify in the future too.
I think that's the best way for our game to grow, honestly. It's one of those things. Recently, the Amtgard International group divested from the Facebook group. And one of the reasons they did that was because it's, the page as a whole just got very contentious, and it was like people would show up and see it and go, fuck, I don't want any part of this, and they would bail. But I wonder if there's not a better way to do that where we can, have a discussion that's open to the public that they can see, but that is, obviously a good representation of our community and not a ton of infighting. I don't know that there's an answer to that. It seems like, looking at Boffers and Blasphemy and stuff, it seems like that's a hard row to hoe, but there's got to be a way we can make that happen.
Honestly, I think one good way is just to show like, hey, it's not basically just like a lot of fighting stuff like that. Because I actually was surprised about all the ANS stuff, like basically like the garb wearing, and honestly, the cooking was actually a surprise for me, which I thought like, wow, that's actually pretty neat. Like all the like other stuff that are possible with Amtgard besides what people just see when what people to see on us us on the field just fighting or whatever. I think that will help.
Yeah, absolutely. The online ANS competition would be like all of the ones that have sprung up during COVID would be a super cool showcase, like a thing that if we could show that to the world, like here's our collaborative efforts making stuff, that would be really cool. I don't know how to do that. Somebody at AI figure that out. This is a hint for you. So we touched on Boffers and Blasphemy a bit, and it seems like I mostly stay the hell away from that page because it makes me anxious, to be honest. But it's one of those places where the Amtgard community has turned, especially during COVID, because it's the only thing to do is to fight online. And there's a lot of arguments there that get brought up, but it seems like there are a lot of people doing the devil's advocate thing. If you could say just like, oh, this is a really loaded question. If you could say one thing to Boffers and Blasphemy for all of those arguments that come up, what would that be? Other than shut the hell up, because that I would love that. But if there was one thing you could say, one message you could leave for that, what would it to make things better? What would it be?
Honestly, that's a very good question for sure.
I'm seeing a lot of faces.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
maybe there's nothing to say, right? Like this can be one of those things where we don't have to have an answer, but they need to sort their shit out somehow.
Well, here's the thing. No matter what people say on B&B, racism's never going to be okay, no matter how much you play devil's advocate. That's probably the thing that pisses me off the most on there. Well, let me say, what if in this situation, don't care, still not okay, don't be a dick. Like, that's quite literally my response. And I have to run it through my man person, and he always tells me, just delete it. It's not worth posting. Just walk away from it. But we're constantly having those conversations where people are trying to play devil's advocate and trying to defend some indefensible idea that just is morally reprehensible. Like there's no reason to defend it, period. End of story.
Right. So I have a very strong opinion about buffers and blasphemy.
It shouldn't exist.
Oh yeah, but not even that. It's more that a lot of times these internet forums and then also fantasy cultures have this strange overlap where they become these last bastions of white supremacy. And that's because there's this revisionist history in fantasy and genres that are loosely based on like European history, right? Where they whitewash it. Am I talking? Okay. Sorry. Where they whitewash it. And so, if you look at like Arthurian lore, we have Black Knights, we have Firafiz, we have Morian, there's a whole black fighting company, the Saracens, which were Moorish. And so
not in our game.
Right. I mean, not the Amtgard Saracens, but the historical Saracens. So there's this huge wealth of history of like people of color being involved in the foundational literature upon which most fantasy genres evolved from. And you see these arguments all the time where like Thor shouldn't be black, it's not historically accurate, or these actors of color shouldn't be knights of the round, it's not historically accurate. That's absolutely not true. There were tons of knights who were people of color. And so you have these arguments that like seep in to the game, which are rooted in like revisionist history or ignorance about the topic, and then those are allowed to permeate unmitigated and just kind of fester in places like 4chan or buffers and blasphemy, where they build, and without like popping that bubble, we'll never see the culture chain. That's my opinion. That's a hot take for you.
Absolutely. Then also, people can go on there and not be themselves, and go on a fake profile and just say a bunch of mead root stuff, and then just be able to kind of get away with it. And I definitely go back and forth with it because I don't like the page, but I also like the page because it is definitely out of a lot of people that I'd rather not talk to, or be around and everything. And then that also causes hostility because I haven't even met this person, but I'm already judging them off of what they see, what they wrote and what I see. And it's kind of like, I don't even want to interact with them. And it makes it really hard to even just kind of like, break that like barrier. Like, hey, can we even be friends? After I've just seen all this racist stuff you done said on, buffers and all that page. And also like, it has caught a lot of people, in my situation who have said a lot of racist things to me, but didn't want to admitted it on the page. And I'm like, boom, thank you for being stupid. But yeah, and so like it's always that kind of thing. But it's also it's like you, it just makes me anxious, and so I don't like it, but it is what it is, and so I don't know how to stop people from talking crap, or like kind of not be racist, because people are just going to be people, and people don't really care too much when they are on a computer. They can be as rude as they want to, but if they're around you or in your face, they won't say half of the stuff that I bet they would, or be as like hard.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Most of the time, the people who shit talk on B&B will never say that to you in real life because they ain't got the balls. So maybe that's a good thing. But I don't want to dwell on the negative too much. We all know what B&B is, and the wider Amtgard community. It's not something you really have to worry about. Focus on your kingdom and making things good. Oh.
Funny enough, actually, I haven't heard a bunch of blasphemy. This is my first time, but I guess I should avoid that.
I would recommend it. So there have been some good discussions, and it is the place, now that we've divested from the main Facebook page, it is the place where a lot of inter-kingdom discussion has gone. So, sometimes genuine discussions do happen there. It's kind of like hockey, I guess. Like sometimes, they say, what is it? You go to a hockey game and maybe some hockey will break out or something like that. So you go to Boffers and Blasphemy, maybe a good conversation will break out of the whole thing. I'm probably painting it with too harsh a brush, but whatever, I don't care. Come at me, B&B. I'm not afraid.
Nobody cares.
Yeah, right. I mean, there is that sort of mindset, right? Oh, it's just memes, it's just shit talking, it's all for banter. But like that stuff makes it back out into the real world, and people get real hurt feelings from it. Let's not. I don't want to dwell on the negative shit though. I do want to obviously, hey, Astrianna, you've been in the game way longer than me. But from my perspective, I started in the mid 2000s, 2006, 2007. I forget exactly when. I can probably look up my first award and date it back a year or two. But early on, starting out in that game, and this actually ties into something that you had said earlier as well, Jojo. It was a different kind of Amtgard. Like calling people out was actually kind of a bad move, because you call somebody out and they're like, "Oh, that guy goes in tattletales." And I had a friend, a really close friend of mine who's now passed, but she was a woman in early Amtgard, and that was never a lot of fun, from what I hear. And she got a lot of flack for doing just normal person shit, but she was a woman. So, she'd go to an event and hook up with somebody, right? Oh, well, she's a whore. She sleeps with black stars or whatever. And that became a thing. And I remember trying to say something, and she was just like, hey, don't bother. And now you can actually at least do that, and people aren't shitty about it. So Amtgard has made some steps. I think we need to keep moving forward. Dame Astrianna, you're making a face. Yeah, that's fair. It's one of those things where incremental improvements, right? But I want to talk about present day Amtgard and sort of where we're at now. Hopefully we'll start meeting after COVID again. So what are your guys' plans for, when we start meeting again? What's the thing you're most excited for? I mean, obviously hitting your friends with sticks, totally cool. But if your park is still shut down because of COVID, what are you looking forward to doing once it releases?
Right. So thank the heavens, our park is still open. Honestly, just got back from a nice session today. Pretty fun. Yeah, we're basically what I am going to be happy about, of course, when the whole COVID situation is over and everybody can meet back up again, is going to big events, of course. Those are pretty fun. Meeting everybody from all across these states, of course. But also, I guess for my personal stuff is talk on fighting pros, honestly, or getting good pro tips about the proper way to fight, what good strategies and all that sort of stuff. Trying to just bring my fighting to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're wanting to get into fighting stuff now, even while things are shut down, I know there's a couple of cool channels for that. There is oh God, what is it that it's in Dragonspine? He does the dojo. Is it Sir?
I know. Oh God, I think so, something like that. But I know what you're talking about. I've seen his videos as well.
Yeah, I think it's Sir Anatole that does the dojo in Dragonspine. We actually did a podcast episode with him, so God, I hope I got that right. There is also, what is it, Stab Chats, which is another podcast specific to fighting. There's a lot of cool fighters that are doing stuff like that. Sir Delos actually has a YouTube channel, which I can't remember. I'll have to send that to you. I'll send you a link. But it's really cool. He does all kinds of fighting. He's invented a lot of the spin shots we use. So if somebody's ever pulled a 5-1-2 on you, that's Sir Delos. So Jojo, same question to you. What are you looking forward to? Assuming COVID lets up soon, and we can start doing things again. What's the biggest thing that you're looking forward to?
The biggest thing that I'm looking forward to is actually getting outside and actually, swinging some foam for sure. No, I appreciate all the online stuff that we do. But the main thing I'm looking forward to is, I'm going to really ride Gwen's coattail on here when she was talking about, like, the whole Amtgard thing and what it means to be, like, a minority in our families and everything. It's like, I'm excited to get back out there just so people can see my face, so they can just see me, so they can just see, like, I'm not socially awkward. I mean, I am a little bit, but like, I can have a conversation with a random person, and so like they don't feel like, oh, okay, so I'm outgoing, maybe they won't like me or they won't be like wanting to talk to me. And also just to be out there because I'm so tired of hearing this is white people shit. If I had a dollar every time I heard someone say this is white people shit, this is even my family, even like sorry for saying the S word. I'm sorry.
Oh, we
Oh,
cuss
we
on the show all
totally
the
cuss
time.
all the time.
I think I've
Okay,
dropped
great.
the F bomb at some point. So
You did.
Yeah, it's like I'm just so tired of hearing that, and even like with like black families, they're like, oh, that white people shit, you're still doing that. I'm like, yes, mom, I am. I'm still doing it. It'd be nice for you to stop calling me that, and everything. So I'm just excited to just still represent, like, hey, yes, we black people are here. We're here, It's not some odd thing. You don't have to treat us like an odd man out. We've always been here. I want people to see my face and know that I'm here. I want to just show up and let my kingdom just represent, like, I need to be there because there has to be a place for people like minority kids to go. They have to feel like that. And it's not any of that so much where me and like Gwen lives and stuff. She lives way far from me also, so it's really important that, like, even if I'm not really vibing with my kingdom right now, I'm still kind of hurt a little bit over situations. I still got to talk to a couple people, but like, that's just personal. But like, even though I'm not still like, but like, I'm unsure, I don't want to go in with the sad face because I got to remember I'm not just advocating for me. I got to make it known for other, like, girls of color or other, like, people that just like, oh man, I want to do it. It's like, oh, Jojo's doing it. She's just, mom, I saw this 30-year-old black girl with blue hair. She was running down and chasing down this 18-year-old. She was keeping up with him and she wasn't out of breath. Maybe you can come join too. Little stuff like that, but just being there for, like, just like I said, just being there and having that whole, like, I'm not the only one face, and like I said, I'm tired of hearing white people shit, like, I snowboard, I ski, I do it all,
right.
And everything. Yeah, and so it's really important to me that I continue to do something that is seen as that, so it can break down that barrier to where it's no longer seen as that, and it's just seen as I'll even take it as, even though I don't like to say nerds, but I'll take it as, like, nerd shit, and it's not everybody can take that kind of thing. But yeah. So it's important to just, my reputation. I just can't wait to get back out there to be representing, Black Girls Rock. We dope too, and everything like that. That's just, that's what I'm excited to look forward to. And then just excited to hopefully going to events now, future events and everything. And hopefully it would be different from our previous ones. Hopefully it would be, everybody would be a lot nicer since we haven't had it in a while. Maybe we'll find a new appreciation for Amtgard.
So you mentioned something that personally I've never had to deal with, and you said it, and I'm just like, oh my God. Is that I've never been, like, responsible for someone's perception of my entire race.
Yeah,
that seems like a lot to have to, like, have on your shoulders.
Oh yeah, it is. It is. But like, I carry that responsibility because I understand it. I don't like it either. I don't like it. I wish
Right.
Who would?
I wish it didn't depend on me, because who likes to represent a whole race, especially like, what? Just because you slept with me, you would have judged everybody off me? Oh God. No, don't do that.
Oh no.
That was a joke. That was just a joke. It's kind of like, that's how it feels though. Kind of like,
Right.
like when someone's like, oh, I just slept with you because you're black. I'm like, God, man, well, don't just say it like that, man. There's tons of different ones, like, I know it's hard to, like, it's a hard thing to just say, like, for me to represent one race, but like, it's important because all it takes for my people, like minorities, is to see that one person. It's just that one other person that you see out there, then you're like, oh, okay. Because I know that's how I felt anytime there was any kind of black person in any fantasy movie or anything that I saw, like, oh my God, that movie's awesome. Just because of that one black person, just because there was one person that looked like me, They weren't all pale, beautiful redhead, like fairies that I look nothing like. There was this beautiful chocolate woman with green eyes and braids. She actually had braids. I do my hair like that, and stuff. So like it's definitely kind of thing to feel about it, but I don't mind representing it. Like I represent for women all the time. So Black women, I can represent for us, and it's not too bad. I can handle it.
I have never until now heard the phrase "that's white people shit." I mean, I get it, right? Like there's a lot of white people shit, but like I've never gone to do something and somebody said, "Oh, that's," on the inverse, somebody said like, "Oh, that's black people shit." I've never had that. I can't even imagine what that's like. But you mentioned, people, kids seeing you doing this thing and seeing a black woman doing this thing. There's and this is a weird example, but who was the guy who played the Black Panther? Chadwick Boseman?
That was, yes.
Yeah. So there's it was on one of those late night TV show things, but they had a thing where they had Chadwick Boseman there, right after the release of Black Panther, and there were all these kids coming up to a poster and saying, like, what would you like to say to Chadwick Boseman? And they're like, thank you for being a superhero that looks like me. And I watched that, and like, I mean, maybe it's because the guy's dead now, and that also is kind of emotional, but like, God, that fucked me up a little bit,
Yeah, I know. I've watched it when he was alive, and it does, and it really makes you find because you have to think about it, because like you said, I've always been a nerd. Like we grew up, and it was, and seeing my brothers, be all these people who were like Superman, and Batman, and I'm like, and then having our family, make fun of them because like, oh, you're the Black Superman, or the Black Batman, because there was never, anyone that looked like us. So to finally have a superhero, it's like, thank you. You have no idea how much it meant to me. And I love walking in Walmart and seeing little boys buy his costume for Halloween.
Yeah.
I love the fact that there are little boys running around. They don't even think about him. They just want to be the Black Panther. They don't even think oh, this is gorgeous Black man, I want to be him. Like I think, but they're like, I just want to be Black Panther. I just want to go around and run around with this suit, because he's awesome. And that's amazing to me. And it's always been reversed for me. It's always been us portraying them like other white characters or whatnot. But now it's nice to see that. I should not say nice to see. Now as people are seeing that there has always been us characters, but Black people have always been lit. That's all I gotta say, man. We always been lit. We always been dope, and I love that the world is now finding out about us. But that's about it. We've always been awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know where else to go with that. I kind of lost it.
No, it's great. It's perfectly fine. Dame Astrianna, same question to you. What's the thing you're most excited for when Amtgard picks back up?
Well, I have to piggyback off of Jojo. Like the representation, huge part of it, especially right now, in the wake of BLM, in the wake of change of guards in our White House. Like that representation is going to make a whole lot of change to our organization, I think, for the better, because we're going to be able to see people out there. And now when we get back to gathering of the clans and to these Rackus and all these other big events, people are going to maybe look at it a little bit different. Because I think before we were just part of this, I don't know, we were just the back room people, you know what I mean? And I felt that way for a long time at a lot of big events where I was like, oh, I was just that minority person that happened to be there. Because, there were like 3 of us that showed up to the event. And they're like, oh yeah, it's the other Black person that's there. And so, oh, do you know this person? I was like, no, they're actually from a completely different part of the United States.
Oh, God.
Why do you think I know them? That's real dumb.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and it happens a lot, and it's happened quite a bit over the last 20 years. It really hasn't changed, and people do assume that I know all the African American people that are in Amtgard, or all the Asians that are in Amtgard, or all the Native Americans that are in Amtgard. Like I don't know. I live in Alaska. I am literally 400 miles from you, Jojo. We're 400 miles apart. Like that's the closest place to me is 300 miles. And that's still in Alaska. I got to travel 1,000 miles to get out of Alaska. So I don't know a lot of the people in the wider Amtgard community, except online. And I have no idea what color you are unless you put your picture up there. And so I'm excited about going to events. I'm mostly excited about beating up my 17-year-old son. I have missed the cathartic moment of beating my child on the field. And I cannot wait because he has earned every single moment of it during COVID.
That's fantastic.
That is
Oh my goodness. If I can piggyback off of what she said, I just love how she said just beat up her kid because oh my goodness. I'm just only 22, but oh my goodness, that's gonna be a great feeling once once if I ever had like a child, they grow up and instead like, oh, you talk back to me? Wait till we get on the field. I gonna whoop you in front of all your friends.
Oh yeah, my son is 7. For Christmas, I got him his own garb and his own sword and his own little board, and he's starting to learn he can't take the old man just yet. It's goofy and when we're fighting an Amtgard, he'll get cocky. He's like, I'm gonna do a flip or whatever, and I'm like, son, if you ever hit me and I find out about it, and then I just trail off because he doesn't know what's gonna happen. He's like, what happens? I was like, you'll see. I don't know what I'm gonna do either, but it's funny to mess with him.
I think it's funny that he thinks girls are tougher because me and Lexi.
Yeah, he watched Lexi, who's a fantastic fighter here in the South. He watched her run me up one side and down the other while we were doing a fighter practice in our backyard, and he was like, "Girls are better than boys at Amtgard," and I was like, "Yeah, why not? Like, she kicked my ass. You can't though." Oh God, where was I? No, so it's really funny. Kids in Amtgard are hilarious, especially the younger ones, as long as we can do it safely and not, skewer them. It's a lot of fun. Crap. I had a thought and I lost it. But now you take it away.
So let's talk more about representation.
That is where I was going. You go.
Okay, good. As long as we're on the same page. So let's talk more about representation. I know you mentioned Black Panther. I've mentioned some Black Knights of the Round. Are there any other fantasy characters or even real life Amtgarders that you look up to?
Well, Gwen, funny story that she was talking about, like, everybody assuming, like, all Black people, know each other. They assumed that I know her when I first came to Amtgard. And so they're like, oh, hey, Joe, how you doing? He's like, oh, you must know Gwen, right? I'm like, who? I'm like, no. But Gwen is definitely somebody I look up to because I'm like, I do not know this person. Who is this person? But they're like, oh, she's apparently, the Black Knight. And I'm like, oh, like the movie Black Knight? They're like, no, like an actual Black. I'm like, oh. And I'm like, okay, sweet. And so I was filled in more. And that's when I told you guys, I'm really like, I had to dive in slowly with this whole Amtgard thing. They were like, no, Jojo, these are knights. This is what knights mean. This section of the book that you skipped over trying to rush the fight. And they broke it down what a knight is and how long they have to do it, to get there. And then, learning about our Northreach history and everything. I was like, oh, wow. So Gwen was definitely one of those people that I looked up to as coming into Northreach. I was like, that's super awesome. And then getting into it and knowing there was this whole other community of other Black Knights, that have been in so long. And I've only met a couple besides Gwen, Malcolm. Harris is another one I look up to because he's been in the game forever, literally before I was born. Like, I love throwing that in his face. I'm like, you were in it, but like to write this down, like, I was born, right? I'm 30 now. Just letting you guys know. So like, he's another one. I try not to just think about only Black Amtgarders because I like to think about like, trans Amtgarders that are coming into also like, other minorities like, Latinos and Filipinos, Asians and also like Native Americans. Also, so I just go for the minorities, period. If that makes sense. Like, whether you're Black or whatnot, if you just have a smidge of something else, I'm rooting for you, or I want to know more about you, or I look up to you just because it's only a few of us that are, like I said, doing this white people shit. And so it's really nice.
How do we and how do we make the game less white people shit? Like, how can I, as me, look at me, make the game less white people shit? Or is it just one of those things where we've got to be a better community so that it becomes that way naturally?
I think what you doing this podcast is really amazing.
Yeah.
This is awesome. And it's not even about like, doing white people shit. You just wanted to give us a platform to actually talk about a few things, and if people want to like chime in or like interact or join and learn something, that's awesome. Which I like that. I think people just at Amtgard could just slow, like I said, just it's all about better communication and being understanding, and just willing to actually listen to people and not be just so willing. Like, I remember the one thing, people are, one thing is going around whether they should change the name of DOTC, going to Gathering of the Clans, and everything like that. Some people think it's not like a big deal, and everything, but like for people like me and Gwen, that already have that kind of that family already kind of like, well, we don't rock with this, well, what are you going to do? And I can't be like, oh yeah, I'm going to Gather of the Clans. Like, the fuck? Are you sure? Do you are you safe going there? Like, do you know what's at the Gather of the Clans? Like, what do you mean? And then I have to explain, no, not mom, not with the K, with the C, and not that kind of thing, and then she ain't got time to hear all that. Like, nobody got time to hear all that, it's kind of off-putting.
Yeah, you got to go, no, wait, it's Scottish, I swear, and then like...
No, wait, it's like, or change it. I like Gotsy. I call it Gotsy, or something else.
What was it you said, Lucas?
Insane Crown Posse. I'm still here for that.
Like that.
Cabbage, what was it you said that it's kind of weird that, we're dressed up as a wizard and being like, yeah, I'm going to clan.
Well, yeah, right.
Yeah, that's not great. But also, it's weird that we have to adhere to a specific cultural myth. You're like, oh, well, the Scottish called it clans. Okay, I'm a bard. What does that have to do with anything? We're all bards, also Scottish. What about paladins? What about wizards? What about whatever? All of it, right? It doesn't have to adhere to. That seems like a disingenuous argument to me.
It definitely does. And it's not even about people. Well, it's about people. People are entitled to it and they're allowed to have their own opinion about it. But then it goes back to for me, I don't like the name of it. Like I said, it's just hard for me to explain to another fellow minority Amtgarder about that event, or something like that, because they're going to be, kind of automatically pushed off about it. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really like it. And then to have people like, anyway, so what's going on with clans? Kind of thing. And it's just like, oh, okay. Thanks, dude, for just totally just being like, well, it's not a big deal to me. Like, it's not like it's just a word, blah, blah, blah. Not even acknowledging it's a little bit deeper. Like, it's just harder, and it's hard to advertise for certain things, that are initially really off-putting, And
Yeah.
so
I feel like that argument for tradition goes back to like what I said before. It's just not something that you can stand on. The meaning of words change. Social climates change, and we can't rely on like, well, it meant this 200 years ago or whatever.
yeah, I think Amtgard will be better once we stop having that feeling of, oh, it doesn't matter to me, or it's not that big of a deal. I don't think it's that big of a deal kind of thing. Then to more of just like, all right, this word, this name obviously is causing a bit of a problem. Like, do we think of something generally and everybody kind of be okay with it? Or I'm all with just calling it the event. Like, that's
The big one.
The big one. The
Yeah.
event.
Well, like, this is a thing I see all the time, right? Where people will say, oh, it doesn't matter that much to me, or I don't care, I can't be bothered to care. Like, okay, well, if you don't care, and you genuinely don't care, then why not care in the direction that helps the most people and just advocate for calling it Gathering of the Crowns or Insane Crown Posse, whatever we want to call it. But like,
Right.
if you genuinely don't care and you mean that, don't care in the way that's more helpful. It seems easy enough.
Right. Don't care, but say I vote for Joe.
Yeah.
Like, whatever. Like, I don't care, but I vote for Joe or vote my vote. Absolutely. And I think more people just having that mind frame of thinking will better Amtgard, because we have a lot of great people. We have way more great people than we do like the few people that I just don't rather not associate with. And so I think just being willing to just be like, all right, and be nice. That hurts. Like, is that a bad word? Just be nice. Like, be nice and understand. Like, I don't know why it's such a hard word, or why it's so hard for me to find adjectives and words to explain to people. Just be a decent person. Like, try your best to just be decent in every action. When you're talking to someone, when you're on the field, off the field, just have respect. And usually respect and decency takes you a long way. Even when you don't realize certain things, even when you make mistakes, people will have that whole seeing you be like this awesome person to be like, okay, this one mistake is not to see all the awesomeness that I've been seeing from this person. And then you will have that more conversations and more people coming to you out of love, like, hey, bro, let's sit down and eat this sandwich with me. And you should probably not say what you just said again, because that's racist, and kind of little thing like that. And I think that's a good little step, just acknowledging that, like, we all don't have to be right. We're all not top-notch dog. Like, it's okay. Like, it's fine. Just be, yeah.
Doesn't cost you anything to be nice, yeah.
Yeah, right. Thank you. Like it just doesn't cost you that. I don't know what else to say. Just be nice. Be nice. And usually when you're nice and you actually think before you act, usually good things happen.
So let's do this. I want to open up the floor. Obviously we try to make things a bit topic driven, but I want to open the floor to you all. What's something that you want to talk about, or something that you think is relevant? Either in your local sphere or just relevant to Amtgard at large.
Well, let's see. So I already said this once, but I'll say it again. Not on this podcast, just like in general in my head. Basically, is that like basically this could just be a start to many other things. Like I definitely thank you guys for doing this podcast like in honor of Black History Month. And I think it could be like a start of many other things too, like definitely LGBTQ for sure. I thought would be another great thing to do like our podcast events, whatever, just like to like tell like to tell as many like minority ethnicities, like any sort of group, to say like, hey, like we accept everybody here,
right,
except for racists and all that stuff, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
just like yeah. So basically, like we accept everybody. We don't really care about who you think you like represent, like whatever, all that sort of stuff. It's just like as long as you're here to have fun, you're fine.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I would say to that is, while I love the idea of doing this podcast, we are unfortunately just one podcast. I would love to see more podcasts from different types of voices crop up. So when you said, an LGBTQ IA plus, I think I don't know the whole thing. Like that would be a really cool podcast to see. A podcast for Black, Indigenous, people of color, Amtgarders would be super cool as well. And this is one of those things. I think you don't have to hope it happens. If somebody wants to make that happen, we have a lot of resources that we've sort of put together on this show. We'd be happy to share. We actually just did a class on it in Winter's Edge, and I think we'll be doing another one. Vidalia, when is that?
March 9th, 5 p.m.
Okay, so we'll be doing another one on how to sort of start a podcast and get it off the ground. It's surprisingly not as expensive as you might think to get a podcast up and running. You can do it for entirely free, I reckon. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, or if anyone's interested in doing, give me a shout. I'm on Facebook, Lucas Bailey, and let us know. We'll help you get that off the ground, because it's something I want to see. Especially, during COVID, seeing all the Amtgard media pop up. It's been really cool, and I hope it continues.
So just to branch off of that, one of the things that I've been working on as kind of like one of our side projects is we have an all non-male podcast coming up where me and some other non-males all get in a room and talk Amtgard. So pretty excited about that one. We also have some episodes planned to cover LGBT issues as well. So that's something you can look forward to.
Awesome.
You have to talk into the microphone. That's why I was pointing.
I'm trying.
Yeah, I know. It's actually, that's the hardest part about starting a podcast, is getting disciplined around where your mic is.
Well, the issue is that my cord is really short, so I have to lean away.
Sit better.
Yeah, no. Just a point of reference. We prefer to be called the Alphabet Mafia now. I just want you to know that.
Okay.
So we do like that title. So feel free to use that. It's been approved.
Okay. So I'm not going to get my ass kicked if I say that, right? Okay.
No. Those of us part of the Alphabet Mafia are okay with it. So one of the things that I would like to see, I know it's a polarizing subject, but one of the things, subjects I'd love to address is paladin, anti-paladin. No, I'm just kidding. I don't want to touch that one. That's just, you're liable to get kicked. And I actually just signed in for paladin for the first time. I've been a knight for almost 7 years. I signed in for the first time as paladin during COVID. I purposely did not sign in as paladin or anti-paladin, mostly to mess with people, because I get joys that way in my life. But I did it because we were having a new knight, finally a new knight here in Northreach, and I promised him that he would never beat me. So that's really the only reason I started signing in. It's really about the competition. But I think that the thing that I would love to see more in Amtgard is people willing to have the conversations and not feeling like they're being yelled at. I also am tired of being a model minority. I think all of us are.
God, yeah.
We're tired of being the model minority and not being allowed to be mad, because then you're the angry Black person. And somehow that's way worse than people who are screaming on the field being absolutely ridiculous. But they can do it, but I can't. I'm not allowed to be angry. And so I want to get rid of the idea that I have to be a model minority while I'm on the field. I'd like to be able to just be me and be angry when I'm angry and be happy when I'm happy and not feel like you said, representing a whole race. And that goes as far back as I can remember, because when you have dark faces in white spaces, you end up being the representation. I mean, one of the examples is I teach. I took care of African American History Month celebration for 10 years at my school. They never asked anyone else to do it, just me. And I said, could I not do that? I would love it for somebody else to take over, because it's okay if other people celebrate it. It's okay if other people run it. Just because I'm the Black person in the room doesn't mean I have to do that. And so if some of that weight could be taken off of our shoulders, that'd be great. And this is, like we said, we've been saying this podcast is a great place to start, because then people can start hearing that message and saying, oh, other people need to celebrate us instead of us having our own little party to celebrate ourselves all the time.
Absolutely.
I never considered it like that, but like, other people sort of, other white people even saying like, hey, that's fucked up, you shouldn't say that kind of thing. I mean, that can make a huge difference. I try to step up and say those things when I see them, although I'll be really honest with you, I try to avoid B&B and not see them. But I wonder if if it would be better to actually be there and see those things and call them the fuck out, right?
Yeah, I think for a lot of us, that would take a lot of the onus on us to stand up. And if we have those allies out there, and I know that's a word that's been thrown around a lot this year, we all need the allies. We all need to be everybody's ally, whether you're a minority or you're underserved population. Everybody needs that out there. And I think that the more that we band together, the better that Amtgard as a whole is going to be. And we're going to be able to start focusing on being the nerds that we are and doing nerd shit and just having a good time when we don't have to worry about all the other bullshit.
Here.
That sounds really nice, honestly.
No, it absolutely does.
Yeah. Well, so let me ask this then. And this is just sort of podcast related here. Do we have anything else we want to talk about? Because if not, that is a fantastic note to end on.
Oh, good.
No, that's it. I'm actually really happy you guys did this whole podcast for Black History Month. It was nice. It was nice to definitely see. Hey, this was a first. And what else is Black History Month about? I've learned about a bunch of African Americans that were the first to do a lot of things, or not even the first, the second, or the third, just period. Just to show people we don't care about race as much as everybody else thinks we do. We don't think of that. We're not going into this thinking oh, I'm going to be the only Black person. We already know we're going to be. Whenever we do something or we do something out of the box, because we already know we have our community. That's already they make fun of us, but our community loves us. And it's always got to be those people that branch out first, And so I love that we actually have a lot to celebrate. And I appreciate you guys putting on this podcast to talk about the first Knights, Black Knights that represented for us. And like Gwen said, I hate that you guys have to be this whole this whole role model thing and be perfect on the field. But I'm glad you guys rocked it and held it with grace. And I'm excited to see the future in Amtgard if we're going to be doing more things like this and having people like us and everybody else who's willing to participate and throw in a hand to, be an ally.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a powerful note to end on. So I'm going to roll us out. Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe to our podcast on YouTube or Spotify to get notified about new episodes. And make sure to follow us on Facebook for announcements and more.